welcome back. We love to take these deep dives, and today we're going to be looking at a story that really shook up the wrestling world.
Yeah, this one goes way beyond just the ring.
Yeah.
You sent in some articles about Hulk Hogan getting booed on Monday Night Raw.
Yeah.
And then the Undertaker's reaction to the whole thing.
Right, and what's so fascinating is that Hulk Hogan, I mean, he's like the name in wrestling for so many people.
Right.
To see him get that reaction from fans, what happened?
Well, to understand how intense that reaction was, you have to go back a few years to some leaked videos from 2007 and 2008 where Hogan was caught using some really offensive racist language.
Wow, seriously. So was this like a one-time thing or?
Unfortunately, no. There were multiple instances, and he used some really hurtful racial slurs and even admitted to holding racist beliefs.
Oh, wow.
For a lot of fans, especially those that grew up with Hogan as this like all-American hero.
Yeah.
It was a huge betrayal.
Yeah, I can imagine that. So what happened after those videos came out? I mean, did it affect his career?
Absolutely. It was huge. He was removed from the WWE Hall of Fame.
Oh, wow.
Lost endorsement deals, faced massive public backlash. He was later reinstated into the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
But the damage was done.
Yeah.
So when he appeared on Raw all those years later, you can see why the audience wasn't too happy to see him.
Makes sense. So where does The Undertaker fit into all of this?
Well, he was also on that episode of Raw.
Okay.
And later on his podcast, 6 Feet Under, he shared his thoughts on the whole incident.
Okay.
What's really interesting is that he did not hold back at all. He talked about how backstage Hogan was kind of trying to no-sell the whole thing.
Wait, no-sell? What does that mean?
So in wrestling, no-selling means pretending like your opponent's moves didn't affect you.
Gotcha.
Like you're so tough, their punches and slams have no impact.
Okay.
So when Undertaker says Hogan was no-selling, the controversy, he's saying Hogan acted like those boos didn't bother him. Like he was just casually having a beer and ignoring the elephant in the room.
Wow, okay, that's pretty telling. I mean, it seems like The Undertaker saw that as a lack of remorse from Hogan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And The Undertaker, who is known for being serious and honest, he wasn't going to let it slide.
Right.
He went on to say, and I quote, "I got feelings for people. Sometimes in life, things come back." He was bigger than life, Americana kind of deal. Then he gets caught on tape saying some derogatory racist things. In this day and age where all of that is such a hot button deal, I don't know what you expect. People are going to react, and they are not going to react in a positive way.
Wow, those are strong words. So he's basically saying that Hogan should have known better and actions have consequences, especially in today's world.
Yeah, you could say that. And what's even more interesting is that The Undertaker also mentioned wanting to be on WWE television less in the future.
Oh, really?
It makes you wonder if this whole situation had something to do with that.
That's a good point. Almost like he's disillusioned with the way the industry handles this kind of stuff. So we've got Hogan trying to brush things off. We've got The Undertaker calling him out on it, and maybe some wider discontent, bubbling under the surface in the WWE.
Yeah.
This is already getting pretty intense, and we've only just started.
Yeah, there's definitely more to unpack here, and in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore the implications of The Undertaker's stance and what it reveals about his character and how attitudes are changing in the wrestling world.
Sounds good. I'm ready for more.
Welcome back to our deep dive. So we're really digging into The Undertaker's reaction to this whole Hulk Hogan booing thing.
Yeah.
And it brings up some interesting questions about accountability, especially for public figures.
It's true. It used to be that if a celebrity got into some kind of trouble, they could just apologize and their PR team could smooth things over.
Right.
But it feels like things have changed.
Oh, yeah. Definitely social media has given fans this huge platform to voice their opinions and hold their heroes accountable.
They're not afraid to call people out.
No, they're not. And it's a lot harder to just sweep things under the rug these days.
It seems like wrestling, even though it's entertainment, is kind of reflecting that shift too.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Wrestling storylines and characters, they've always drawn inspiration from what's happening in the real world.
Right.
So it's not surprising that we're seeing issues like racism and accountability being woven into these narratives.
It's interesting because it makes you think about what we expect from our idols.
Yeah.
And how we deal with it when they don't live up to those expectations.
Exactly. And, in Hogan's case, some people might say, well, he apologized. He was reinstated into the Hall of Fame, so why keep bringing it up?
Right.
But it's not always that simple, is it?
No, it's not, because it makes you question how sincere that apology really was. Was it genuine change or just damage control?
Exactly. And remember how The Undertaker said that Hogan was no selling the booing backstage.
Yeah.
I think that suggests a lack of awareness on Hogan's part about how serious this whole thing was.
It's like he was dismissing the fans' feelings.
Yes, and refusing to acknowledge the hurt he had caused.
And for fans who've experienced racism firsthand,
Yeah.
that's got to mean a lot to them.
Absolutely, it shows them that their voices are being heard.
Right.
And that this kind of behavior won't be tolerated.
So The Undertaker is basically saying this is a big deal.
Yes.
And we can't just pretend it didn't happen.
Exactly. And remember, he's known for being a man of integrity.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to let it slide.
So we've got Hogan trying to move past this controversy. We've got The Undertaker taking a stand against it.
Right.
And then maybe this like underlying sense of disillusionment with the industry itself.
It's all connected.
Where do you think this leaves wrestling moving forward?
Well, I think it's a sign that wrestling is evolving.
In a good way.
Yeah, we're seeing more diversity in the wrestlers and the storylines.
That's great.
And there's definitely a greater awareness of the power of fan voices.
So maybe this Hogan incident, as uncomfortable as it was, could lead to some positive change?
I think it's forcing the industry to face some tough truths
Yeah.
and adapt to the times. You know, wrestling is a reflection of society.
Yeah.
And those expectations for accountability and representation, they're only going to become more important.
Okay, so what about The Undertaker? We were saying how he seems disillusioned with the way the industry's handled this whole thing.
Right.
Where do you think he goes from here?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, he's a legend.
He's seen it all.
Yeah, he's a veteran. He's seen everything. And he's definitely not afraid to speak his mind.
And he even said he wants to be on WWE television less.
Right.
Do you think this whole incident might push him further in that direction?
It's possible he might decide to step back from the spotlight altogether.
Yeah.
Or maybe he'll use his platform to advocate for some changes within the industry.
Yeah, that would be really interesting to see.
It would, because he has so much respect and influence.
Right.
He could make a real difference.
So this brings up a bigger question about the role of wrestling legends, like The Undertaker,
Yeah.
as the industry changes.
Do they change with it, or do they risk becoming irrelevant?
Right, because they've built their careers on this certain image.
And a certain set of values.
So we've got this clash of ideologies, a wrestling legend grappling with his past, and another wrestling legend at a crossroads in his career.
And it all comes back to this question of how do we deal with these complex issues in a world that's constantly changing?
There's definitely a lot to think about here.
There is. And in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to dig even deeper into these questions and explore what this means for the future of wrestling and its place in our evolving cultural landscape.
All right, welcome back to the show. So we've been talking about this whole Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker thing.
Yeah.
And it really feels like, it goes way beyond just wrestling.
It definitely does. It's about how we as a society deal with things like race and accountability and what we expect from our heroes.
Right, and even those like fictional heroes,
Exactly.
So I'm curious, what kind of impact do you think this is going to have on wrestling going forward?
Well, I think we're already seeing wrestling become more inclusive
Okay.
and responsible.
Yeah.
We're seeing a more diverse group of wrestlers, and the storylines are touching on these important social issues.
Yeah.
And fans are definitely making their voices heard more than ever.
So maybe this whole controversy, even though it was uncomfortable,
Yeah.
could actually lead to some positive changes.
I think so. I think it's forcing wrestling to face some uncomfortable truths and to change with the times, because at the end of the day, wrestling is a reflection of society.
Right.
And those expectations for accountability and representation, they're only going to get stronger.
And what about The Undertaker?
Yeah.
We were talking about how he seemed kind of disillusioned with how the industry handled all of this.
Right.
What do you think he's going to do now?
That's a tough question. I mean, the guy's a legend.
He's seen it all.
He's a veteran. He's been through it all, and we know he's not afraid to speak his mind.
And he even said he wants to do less WWE television.
Right.
So do you think this whole thing might push him further in that direction?
It's possible he might just decide to step away from the spotlight altogether.
Yeah.
Or maybe he'll use his platform to try and change things within the industry.
That would be pretty amazing to see.
It would, because he has a lot of respect and a lot of influence.
He could really make a difference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it really makes you think about the role of these legends like The Undertaker, as wrestling changes?
Yeah, do they change with it or do they get left behind?
It's a tough question, especially when they've built their careers on a certain image.
And a certain set of values.
Right.
So we've got this clash of ideologies, this wrestling legend wrestling with his past, and then another wrestling legend who's maybe at a crossroads in his career.
It's complicated.
Yeah, so wrapping up this deep dive, I'm thinking about how this whole thing with Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker really brought up some bigger issues.
It did.
It made us question our heroes and face some uncomfortable truths and think about the power of individual voices and speaking out against things that are wrong.
Yeah, that's a lot to think about.
It is, really is.
And it leaves us with some important questions. How do we hold our heroes accountable? How do we make sense of our childhood memories as adults? And what role do industries like wrestling play in shaping our understanding of all these issues?
Those are some really good questions.
There's no easy answers.
No, but I think it's important that we keep talking about these things.
I agree.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and thought-provoking. And until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep the conversation going.